The night was supposed to be perfect. The cameras were ready, the red carpet gleamed under the soft glow of Hollywood lights, and fans eagerly gathered, hoping to catch a glimpse of Keanu Reeves on one of the biggest nights of his career. It was the premiere of his latest film, a project he had poured his heart into. A night meant to be filled with celebration and joy. But just as he was about to leave his home, dressed in his signature black suit, something unexpected happened. His loyal dog, a gentle and loving companion who had been by his side for years, did something Keanu had never seen before. Instead of excitedly wagging his tail or following him to the door, the dog planted himself firmly in front of Keanu, blocking his path. At first, Keanu chuckled, thinking it was just a playful act. He reached down to ruffle the dog's fur, but something about the way his furry friend looked up at him sent a shiver down his spine. There was an unusual sadness in the dog's eyes, a deep, almost human sorrow. The way he stood there, unmoving, wasn't normal. Keanu felt an odd unease settle in his chest. This wasn't stubbornness. This wasn't mischief. This was something else. Something serious. "Come on, buddy, I have to go," Keanu said softly, his voice gentle but firm. He tried to step around, but the dog shifted, blocking him again. Keanu frowned. His dog had never behaved like this before. Ever. His driver was already waiting outside, and his phone buzzed with messages from his team, reminding him it was time to leave. The world was waiting for him, but something told him, something deep, in his gut, that he couldn't ignore this. He crouched down, searching his dog's eyes, trying to understand, and then he noticed it. His dog was trembling. A quiet whimper escaped from the animal's throat, as if he was trying to say something, trying to tell Keanu something he couldn't put into words. A chill ran down Keanu's spine. Something was wrong, really wrong. His heart pounded as he glanced around, his instincts sharpening. His home was quiet, too quiet. A strange stillness filled the air, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. His fingers brushed against his dog's fur, and in that moment, he knew. He couldn't leave, not yet. And then, just as he was about to take a step back, his dog let out a sound that made Keanu freeze in place. A sound so filled with pain, with desperation, that it sent a cold shiver down his spine. Something was terribly wrong, and whatever it was waiting for him to find out. Keanu's breath caught in his throat as he knelt beside his dog, his hands gently running over the trembling body. His mind raced with possibilities. Was his dog sick? Hurt? Was something in the house? The uneasy silence around him only made his pulse hammer harder. The feeling in his chest was more than just worry. It was instinct. That same sharp instinct that had saved him before, in real life and on set, warning him when something wasn't right. The dog whined again, his head lowering, his tail stiff. Keanu had spent years with him, had seen every mood, every emotion in those deep, trusting eyes. But this was fear, real fear. Keanu stood up, scanning his home. Everything looked normal. His books were still stacked neatly on the table. The faint hum of the fridge filled the space, and the soft glow of the lamp near the couch gave off a warmth that was supposed to feel safe. But it didn't. Not now. Something was off. His phone buzzed again. His team, his driver. They were waiting. The world was waiting. But Keanu couldn't shake the feeling that if he walked out that door, he'd regret it. He took a deep breath and moved toward the hallway. The dog hesitated for a moment before following him, staying close, his nails clicking against the wooden floor. Keanu's heart pounded with each step. His home, usually his sanctuary, suddenly felt unfamiliar. He reached the back of the house, where a large window overlooked his quiet, dimly lit backyard. The wind stirred the leaves, casting strange moving shadows across the glass. He peered outside, his fingers tightening around the edge of the curtain. Nothing seemed out of place, and then a noise, faint, just barely there, a soft rustling sound, like movement, but slow, deliberate. Keanu's muscles tensed. He wasn't the kind of person who got scared easily. He had trained for action roles, handled intense stunts, even faced life-threatening situations in reality. But this was different. This was something unseen, something unknown. He turned his head slightly, listening. The dog stood beside him, ears perked up, body rigid. Whatever was out there, his dog knew it too. Then another noise, closer this time. Keanu's breath hitched. He reached for the door handle, ready to step out and face whatever it was. But just as his fingers grazed the metal, his dog growled. A deep, low, warning growl. Keanu stopped, his pulse thudding in his ears. He had never heard his dog make a sound like that before. It wasn't just a defensive growl. It was something more, a sound of dread, a sound of protection. Keanu's grip on the handle loosened. His gut told him not to open that door. Not yet. Instead, he turned away and grabbed his phone, his fingers shaking slightly as he dialed. "Hey," he said the moment his friend answered. "I need you to check something for me." His voice was steady, but his heart was pounding. His friend, an old buddy from his stunt days, immediately picked up on the tension in Keanu's tone. "What's going on?" Keanu exhaled, glancing at his dog, still standing between him and the door, still locked in that protective stance. "I don't know yet," Keanu admitted, "but something doesn't feel right." As he spoke, another sound filled the air, a soft, distant chime. His landline phone. It rang once, then stopped. A cold chill ran down Keanu's spine. No one ever called that number, not unless it was important. He turned slowly, staring at the phone on the wall. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. The dog let out another low growl, this time turning toward the phone as well, as if sensing the same thing Keanu was. Something was about to happen. Something big, and whatever it was. Keanu stood frozen, staring at the landline. His breath came slow and measured. But inside, his mind raced. That number. No one called it. Almost no one even had it. And yet, there it was, ringing once, and then cutting off. Like a signal, a warning. His dog hadn't moved. He stood firm, ears back, body tense, as if bracing for something unseen. Keanu's fingers curled around his phone, but he didn't dial again. Instead, he stepped closer to the landline, his pulse heavy in his chest. Silence. Nothing but the low hum of the house around him. Then, another sound. But this time, it wasn't from outside. It was from inside, a faint creak, like a floorboard. Shifting. Keanu's eyes flicked toward the hallway. His gut tightened. His dog let out a small whimper, his tail tucked low. And that's when Keanu knew he wasn't alone. He didn't hesitate. Years of training, years of instinct kicked in. He moved fast, his steps controlled but deliberate. His muscles coiled and ready. His hand reached for the closest thing within arm's reach. A heavy book from the shelf. Not much, but enough. The hallway stretched before him, dim and quiet. He took a step forward, then another. His heartbeat was steady now, his breath deep. His dog followed, silent, sticking close to his side. And then, just as he rounded the corner, a shadow moved. Keanu reacted instantly, his body twisting as he raised the book, ready to strike. But then he saw it. An old man, frail and shaking, standing in his home. Keanu's grip on the book loosened. His heart still pounded. But confusion quickly took over. The man. He wasn't threatening. He wasn't dangerous. He looked lost. The old man's eyes were glassy, filled with something distant, something sad. His clothes were worn, his hands trembling at his sides. Keanu didn't speak right away. He just stared, trying to make sense of what was happening. His dog, still tense, let out a soft whimper, but didn't growl this time. The old man blinked, looking at Keanu as if he were seeing someone else entirely. And then, in a quiet, cracked voice, he finally spoke. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I didn't know where else to go." Keanu felt something deep in his chest shift. His grip on the book fully released as he took a slow step forward. The man didn't flinch. "Who are you?" Keanu asked, his voice calm but firm. The old man swallowed hard, his lips trembling. And then, finally, he said it. "I knew your father." The words hit Keanu like a wave. He hadn't thought about his father in years. Not in this way. His father had been a complicated figure, absent for much of his life, leaving behind more questions than answers. Keanu's throat tightened. He looked at the man again, really looked at him this time. The tired eyes, the frail body, there was something familiar there. Not in recognition, but in feeling. "What are you doing here?" Keanu asked, his voice softer now. The old man let out a shaky breath. "I needed to tell you something. Before it's too late." Keanu's dog finally relaxed, moving forward to sniff the man's hand. The tension in the room began to fade, replaced by something else, something Keanu couldn't quite name. He exhaled slowly, then nodded toward the kitchen. "Come on," he said. "Let's talk." The old man hesitated, then gave a small nod. As they walked, Keanu glanced down at his dog, who wagged his tail just once, as if to say, "You did the right thing." And somehow, Keanu knew tonight was always meant to happen. Not the premiere, not the flashing lights. This was where he was supposed to be.